right. Good evening. Welcome to the Eastern Carver County Schools Elementary Info Session. My name is Kaylee Haga. I'm the Director of Communications and Community Relations. Thank you all for taking the time to join us this evening. Logistical piece, we're going to go through a presentation that talks about the elementary model and all of the pieces we have in place to support our learners. And then we will take questions from the chat, questions that have been submitted ahead of time. We have a number of questions. We may not be able to get through all of them in the time that we have together. So know that we continue to work through answering questions as quickly as we can. Would encourage you to contact your building principal if you've got questions about the elementary model or other pieces of information that you hear tonight, because they're also here to help you. They're also on the call with us, so they will be helping answer some of these questions as well. So with that, let's get started. Thank you for your time. It is my pleasure now to introduce Brian Beresford, who will take us through the beginning of the presentation. Brian?
Thank you, Kaylee. Good evening, everyone, and I extend my welcome to you as well. My name is Brian Beresford, and I'm a district level administrator in the Teaching and Learning Department, and I have the pleasure of working with all the elementary schools across the district in the area of curriculum and instruction. We wanted to share with you this evening some of the work and decision-making that's gone into the district's plan moving forward. We've chosen a very collaborative model and focused all of our decision-making through the use of data. Since last spring, we've engaged with many stakeholder groups, including families, teachers, and students as well. You'll see on this slide, we surveyed over 4,700 families and had engaged over 800 teachers in listening sessions. Additionally, internally, our Human Resources Department did surveys within the district to collect data from teachers and other employees in the district. We've been guided by state data and the governor's plan. We've consulted with the Minnesota Department of Health, the Minnesota Department of Education, as well as Carver County's Public Health Department. The public health data has been a key component in realizing our plan moving forward. This diagram put forward by the state plan and specifically by the governor's plan really shows the variety of ways in which school could happen this fall and through the 2021 academic year. You'll see that the data references Carver County public health data, and we're currently at a point of 7.2 cases per 10,000 residents. The governor's framework provided these 5 scenarios, and right now our district falls in an elementary in-person model and a secondary hybrid model. We know that we could be in any of these cells of this dial at any point during the academic year, and so our planning has sufficiently prepared for each of those models that we'll speak to. We've prioritized maximum in-person learning when possible, but the district is moving forward with a modified hybrid model. So this is really speaking to the district at large, K through 12, so it's a modified hybrid. We're prioritizing in-person learning for our youngest learners, so we will bring back all kindergarten through 5th grade students as we begin the academic year, 4 days a week. We know that developmentally, our youngest learners are in need of the most in-person contact and most support in a classroom. So therefore, it really is crucial to try to bring those young learners into the classroom. The public health data supports having young learners in the classroom and back in school. The One Distance Learning Day allows students and parents alike to become accustomed to some of the technology supports and needs and uses should we have to pivot into a distance learning situation. It'll also offer our staff, our custodial staff, to do some deep cleaning on Wednesdays. Obviously, we'll be cleaning every day, but weekends and Wednesdays provide additional time for deep cleaning. Some of the other in-person health and safety that we've considered in our plan, again, referencing the Minnesota Department of Health and the Centers for Disease Control. We recognize it's not always feasible and will not always be feasible to maintain a 6-foot social distance between people in a back-to-school model for elementary. Staff and students, therefore, are asked and will be wearing face masks as a mandatory procedure throughout the school year unless an accommodation is requested and documented by a provider. Staff and students will all be provided with a face mask. Additional masks are available in the case a student forgets a mask or one becomes in disrepair. Social distancing will be modeled on floor and seating markings in public spaces, in our hallways, in our waiting rooms, and our reception areas. An ongoing review of transportation capacity and creating as much space as possible for all of our students to travel safely to and from school will continue to be a priority. Additionally, we'll provide regular disinfection of the buses. An ongoing review of classroom capacity in an attempt to create as much space as possible in all of our classrooms has been provided. Many of the pieces of furniture that may be ancillary or not critical have been removed or put in other locations. Substantial restrictions on building visits by parents, volunteers, and external groups will be deemed mandatory. Sanitizer will be readily available to our students and staff and other people throughout the building, and we will continue to promote good hygiene practices. We'll continue to do cleaning of high-touch areas throughout the day. Working here at the District Education Center, I've become very familiar with all of our custodial staff as they're passing by the offices frequently to clean handles and bathroom facilities. In addition to our in-school practices for elementary students, we also have the option of the Eastern Carver County Schools Online Learning Academy, or OLA. Distance learning will be provided through Google Classroom for each learner who's engaged in our online academy. This allows us to deliver curriculum in a variety of ways and will become a standard practice across the district. All classes are taught by an Eastern Carver County Schools employed educator. Teachers at all levels will begin the year by building strong relationships and creating a sense of belonging within the distance learning community. It's really important to us that we provide a safe, welcoming space for all learners, regardless of the format in which they are learning. Teachers will host virtual check-ins daily for all learners and continue to provide support throughout the day to build relationships and to provide academic support. There will be both asynchronous and synchronous learning opportunities. That means things that are provided by the teacher for students to do on their own, and then in real time video conferencing with students who are enrolled in the online academy. Parents and students who commit to the online academy are making a commitment for the first semester of school, which ends December 22nd.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kelly Crickleborn. I'm one of the supervisors for Specialized Educational Services. Students with disabilities have the right to a free, appropriate public education, frequently referred to as FAPE. This right is guaranteed by the Individuals with Disabilities Act, or IDEA. The right to FAPE has not changed as a result of COVID. Each student who receives specialized educational services or who served through a 504 plan will continue to receive those services. IEP teams, of which families are a critical part, will continue to meet and make determinations about appropriate services, related services, and modifications for each student on an individual level. All students who receive services through an IEP will begin in the base model that's been determined by the district, and Brian just described that for you. One thing that is different as a result of COVID is students' individual education plans will also include what's called a contingency learning plan. So the CLP, contingency learning plan, will be embedded within the IEP. That plan will be developed in partnership with families and will map out the services and supports that students will receive in each of the possible models or in each of the cells of the dial Brian was describing, so that if we do need to pivot, plans will continue and services will not be disrupted. Family members will be part of those decisions. They will have IEP meetings and will have the opportunity to provide consent for the contingency learning plans within the individualized education plans. 504 team members will also review each student's plan to ensure Section 504 plans are appropriate and are provided. We have an incredibly talented and dedicated special education staff who will be returning to work on August 31st, and families can expect to be contacted by their IEP manager sometime within that week to schedule those IEP meetings in order to develop those contingency learning plans. I want to acknowledge the incredible support provided by our Special Education Advisory Council and all of our parents who've been reaching out with feedback, input, and suggestions. It's very valuable to hear from our families. Thank you. We do have one more family engagement specifically designed for students and families receiving specialized educational services tomorrow, and that can be registered for on our community engagement site. I will pass it on to Building and Grounds.
Hello, my name is Jim Munzemeyer. I'm the Director of Buildings and Grounds for Eastern Carver County Schools. I wanted to start out today with a discussion on some indoor air quality questions. It's one of our specialties is to provide very good indoor air quality to our staff and students. Coincidentally enough, back in February, we hired an outside firm to measure the indoor air quality in every classroom. This was done while the classrooms were fully occupied by students and in the middle of winter. I can happily say that we easily passed the parts per million of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is a great indicator of the amount of ample fresh air delivered to our buildings. So that was a really good, timely test for us. Since then, we've opened up our outside air dampers to a greater extent per the CDC guidelines to allow more fresh air in to help with the COVID problems. The other things that we're doing is the sanitation stations. So we're going to have hand sanitizers throughout the buildings, mainly at the student funnel areas throughout the schools, every entranceway and exitway, and near the cafeterias for the kids to use that didn't get a chance to wash their hands with soap and water. The cleaning process that we use throughout the day. So there's two different steps. One is sanitizing. That happens throughout the day. That's 3 to 4 times a day. We'll have a custodian go through and sanitize the handrails, doorknobs, anything that a student or a staff member touches throughout the day. And then at night, we do our disinfection. Disinfection is different than sanitizing. With disinfection, we get the surface wet and allow it to stay wet for the dwell time that our disinfectant requires. For us, it's 4 minutes. So the disinfectant we have chosen to use is a peroxide-based disinfectant. It's about the most mild disinfectant that still hits the EPA list for approved efficiency. The other thing we're going to be doing is adding cleaning kits for every classroom. We have over 550 classrooms in the district. Every classroom will have a cleaning kit that will have the sanitizer in it, rags, and gloves for teachers or other staff members to use if they need to throughout the day. You'll also see signage, like Brian was mentioning, throughout the classrooms and throughout the whole school. Areas where students will be waiting. They'll be reminded by the dots on the floor, much like you've seen perhaps at retail establishments throughout the area. Finally, we'll have some plexiglass barriers. We've ordered 40 or 50 of the portable ones. These are used for screenings. Let's say there's a speech therapy screening that needs to occur or a kindergarten screening perhaps. They can be put anywhere. They're easily transported. A teacher can move them from table to table if they need them. We also will have more permanent ones at all of the service counters throughout the building, front counters, concession stands, things like that. We want those wherever we can't maintain the 6 feet of distance between the customers and our staff members. That's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. My name is John Thomas. I'm the transportation manager for the school district, and I'll be giving you a brief rundown of our transportation plan for the start of the school year. All of our routes are going to be set up in an all classroom scenario that would naturally reduce the passenger loads to meet the MDE guidance in the hybrid scenario without causing any major changes or confusion or disruption. We're going to be adjusting our standard procedures to control adequate passenger counts to meet the Department of Ed guidance, including limiting the alternate address requests, not permitting extra drivers or extra riders, and limiting route changes to twice monthly. We'll be making route changes approximately around the 15th and the last day of the month so that we can accumulate request changes or new changes and make an effective change. Our routes will be designed to operate in a transit model for each school. Drivers will run the same route every day, no matter what hybrid group goes to school that day. Bus stops and times will remain the same, and it's understood that there may be days when there is not a rider at a bus stop. Ridership will be monitored regularly with plans to make adjustments where needed at the next scheduled route change date. For those of you who are questioning, our maximum number of passengers on a standard 77 passenger school bus will be 37, as the MDE has guided us to not have more than 50% of the standard capacity. Our safety and cleaning protocols, the drivers will be required to wear masks. Additional PPE will be worn by drivers and paras that work with our students in close proximity. For instance, securing wheelchairs, securing car seat buckles, or other circumstances. Drivers will complete a health screening checklist each day before embarking on their route, and social distancing plans have been created at all of our transportation facilities. As a requirement of the Department of Education, the passenger seat behind the driver will remain empty to maintain approximately a 6-foot distance between the driver and passengers during the route. Windows and roof vents will be open when the weather permits to allow for increased fresh air flow. A small supply of face masks will be available for students who forgot them. Reminder that it's required that students wear face masks on the school bus as well. Hand sanitizer will be available upon request by a passenger. Our buses are going to be cleaned between each run by wiping down the high touch points and seats that students used. We'll be using the same approved chemicals that are being used in the schools. Our buses will be cleaned at the end of the day each evening using an electric static sprayer and also approved chemicals. Students will be encouraged to load the bus from the back to the front during morning routes in order to minimize passenger contact. We needed to adjust bell times for earlier or later times to maximize our current route fleet and driver supply. Additionally, a change in the bell times will provide extra time at our schools for staggered loading and unloading procedures, additional parent traffic issues, and to allow us to do our bus cleaning procedures. You'll see all the school bell times posted here in front of you on the screen.
Good evening. My name is Kim Fronta, and I'm the Director of Nutrition with Eastern Carver County Schools. We're just going to take a couple minutes to go over what nutrition services will look like for your student to start the school year this year. It is important to note that all students at Eastern Carver County Schools will have multiple ways to access meals depending on their grade level and learning model choice. On days where your student is learning in their school building, they will visit our kitchens and cafeterias as they have in previous years, but with extra safety and physical distancing measures in place. At the elementary level, for days that they are learning at home, we will have one-day meal kits, and elementary students will have the opportunity to take home a one-day meal kit when they leave the building on Tuesdays to be enjoyed while they're distance learning on Wednesdays. The meal kits have a lot of our students' favorite items, and we definitely think it's things that they will enjoy. They will be charged to your student's meal account or are free if your student qualifies for free or reduced price meals. To place a standing order or a one-time order meal kit order, you can either contact your child's homeroom teacher or the nutrition services office, and we'll arrange that for you. All students that are distance learning this year have the option to receive a 5-day meal kit, and that will be distributed either at Chaska High School between 10:30 and 12 on Tuesdays, or if transportation to pick up the meal kit is a barrier, we can deliver it for you. As an alternative to meal kits, all students K through 12 can pick up daily meals at the 112 drive-in was what we're calling it, at Chanhassen High School on any day that they are distance learning. These meals are available curbside from 10:30 to 1, and students can customize their order to include lunch, breakfast for the following day, some signature a la carte items. And again, if your student receives free or reduced price meals, the meals through the daily pickup at Chanhassen High School is also free. You'll find all this information along with different menus on the different styles of service on our website. Food safety and sanitation is something we prioritize every year. This year, we just have some additional steps that we are including in our daily regimens. So these are things that your students will probably notice when they're coming to get their meals, and they are things that are recommended by the Minnesota Department of Health, the Centers for Disease Control, and the Minnesota Department of Education. Some of those things may be that all staff are wearing masks, just like the rest of the staff in the building, along with gloves and face shields when the task allows, which will be during service. So when the student comes through to get their food, their server will be wearing a face shield. We have plexiglass and glass barriers installed all over our serving lines and around our point of sale computers to eliminate any exchange of droplets in those places. The students' purchases will be contactless, so they will either swipe their badge or they will, the buildings have systems for the students making purchases without having to touch a pin pad. There are also floor markers installed in the serving areas to help the students maintain that 6 feet of physical distance in line. And then food items will be either single serve or served to them, and there will be no communal serving utensils or anything that would help pass germs from one student to another. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to our office.
Good evening, I'm Sue Harberts, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Community Education Department. And I want to talk just briefly about options for childcare. Tier 1 childcare is for distance learning days. So in the modified hybrid model that we'll be starting the school year out with, that will be on Wednesdays. The Tier 1 childcare is mandated by the governor that districts provide this for essential workers. And on the screen on the right, you can see that it lists how the governor has defined what a Tier 1 essential worker is. We'll be prioritizing those registrations. Registration opens tomorrow at 8:00 a.m. and will go through Monday at noon. The way the hybrid model for childcare looks is that the club care program, which is our school age care program, will be running before and after school Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. On Wednesdays is the distance learning day. So our club care families will have before and after school care as an option. And then either they will be in the Tier 1 childcare at no charge, or they will be in the club care program, which is a fee-based program. Club care families are being asked to re-enroll or confirm their registration starting tomorrow also, and that goes through Monday. Once we get registrations, we'll start processing them. Families will be receiving a confirmation letting them know if they have gotten into the program that they've requested. And if you have additional questions, you're welcome to call the Community Education Department, or you can look on the district website on the Return to Learn section, and on the left-hand side, there is more information about childcare. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tara Cliff, and I'm the Health Services Supervisor for the district. And so we're asking for families' cooperation to help us screen their children for illness each day. So please take your child's temperature and ask them how they're feeling every day before sending them off to school. You know your child best, and so we need your assistance in helping us to determine whether they're ill or if they're just nervous about coming to school, or if something else is happening with them. And if they're having symptoms of illness, please keep them home. Any student who is experiencing any symptoms while at school will be checked by the building nurse and isolated away from others until they're picked up. So anyone who has a positive case of COVID would be reported to the building nurse at that school, either through the family or through public health. So we do have a collaboration with our local public health, who have been amazing, and a case investigation will be conducted on all positive cases. So based on that information that was received, we would send out notifications to those who have a close contact with the person who's positive. A school-wide notification won't necessarily be sent in each case unless it affects the entire school. So due to data privacy, we have to be very careful about who's notified and when, and so that will be determined in collaboration with our local public health. Anyone who has a positive test needs to stay home and isolate for 10 days from the onset of symptoms, or whatever their testing date was if they were asymptomatic. So symptoms need to be improved, and they need to be fever-free without any medications for 24 hours before they could return to school. They wouldn't need a doctor's note or a negative test in order to return back to school. We're keeping them out for the entire 10 days, more if they were still having symptoms, but at least 10 days. And any household contacts will also need to stay home and watch for symptoms for 14 days from their last contact with the person who's positive. So anyone who has symptoms of an illness, but not necessarily a positive diagnosis, should also stay home or be evaluated by the building nurse if they're at school. The student would be isolated away from other well students. And we recommend following up with your healthcare provider. A case investigation, lots of questions is going to occur, and notifications again would be determined in collaboration with public health. Anyone with symptoms are asked to stay home and isolate for the 10 days and can return back to school after they've had the 10 days improvement of symptoms and fever-free for 24 hours. So if you're exposed or you're deemed a contact of somebody who is tested positive or is symptomatic for COVID, would be evaluated by the building nurse. That could be either by phone if you're keeping your child home, or it could be while at school. Anyone deemed a contact or exposed would stay home for 14 days from the last contact day to watch for symptoms. So the little difference there is it's 10 days if you have symptoms or you test positive to let that illness run its course. And then those who are watching for symptoms, who might have been exposed but are just kind of waiting to see if they're going to develop symptoms, that is a 14-day quarantine while you're watching for symptoms. If symptoms were to develop or they tested positive, then we would follow the guidance that we saw just a minute ago for testing for positive cases. Thank you.
So we've been talking about how we're returning to learn for the elementary schools this fall with an in-person model. And again, that is based on the guidance from the governor and public health data from the Minnesota Department of Health, and information that's been confirmed or affirmed by Carver County Public Health. We will continue to monitor and make transitions as needed between models. Factors that will influence and be considered will include the impact of the school community, staffing, trace and isolation, testing capacity, and extracurricular activities. We know that the numbers will change and that balancing stability and health and safety is critically important. We will monitor health data and other concerns and continue to reevaluate the model on a monthly basis, but certainly not wait an entire month if a change is needed. With the exception of quarantines necessary in the event of a positive case, staff and parents will be provided information in advance of any shift in the learning models for the district. We know that this is a community and communal effort. Moving the dial forward to in-person learning for all students in the district requires full support of the community. Public health data needs to continue to move in the correct direction. We need to follow the guidance from the Minnesota Department of Health and the CDC guidelines in wearing masks, practicing social distancing, practicing good hygiene, and reducing our risk of exposure.
All right, thank you to our Rockstar District staff for that presentation. And now we will move into the questions portion. I've got a whole lot of questions written down. I know there's more questions coming into the chat. We've got about half an hour. We'll get through as many as we can. I'm going to call out principal names or district administrator names based on the questions that I have. We'll try to work around so everybody gets a chance to speak. I know a question that's on a lot of people's minds, and I guess I'll start with June, if that's all right. When will students get the chance to meet their teachers and tour the schools? Are we doing a connect and assess? What's that gonna look like this year? Hi, June.
Thanks, Kaylee. Hi, I'm June Johnson, and I'm the principal at Carver Elementary. We will be doing Connect 2020. That's a little different than Connect and Assess. We just feel that the kids coming back, they just need to talk with us. They need to visit. They need to see their classroom. So we're not going to do any assessments, but they'll have an opportunity to see their classroom, meet their teacher, drop off their supplies, and just get a feel for the school again. And I tell you, we can't wait to have them back in our building. We are so excited.
Thanks, June. Nate, Slindy, if you could come off of mute, I've got a question for you. I'm hoping you can help parents understand what's going to be different about distance learning this fall. When we think about that Wednesday, why is that Wednesday important for our young students to understand distance learning if they were in that distance learning format in the spring?
Yeah, thanks, Kaylee. My name is Nate Slindy, principal of Clover Ridge Elementary, and thanks for being here tonight. We know this is a huge decision, and to answer Kaylee's question, we learned a lot last spring about what it was like to experience distant learning, and we've used the term crisis learning in teaching because that's what it was in the spring. We've learned a lot. We know that there's more opportunities for teachers and families to connect virtually over the internet, and we hope that will continue throughout. The Wednesday, we know that it's an inconvenience for families in terms of daycare schedules, working from home, working in their place of work, but we also know that this will help prepare our students should we need to pivot to distant learning or hybrid learning right away. So we're still working out the details of what the expectations will be that day, but you can expect that learning will continue. We're hoping for some synchronous opportunities during that day, as well as learning opportunities and objectives throughout the day when students are at home.
And for us non-educators out there, Nate, what does synchronous mean?
Thank you, Kaylee. Synchronous means in real time. So it may, at the elementary level, it may look like a morning meeting where kids connect and talk about the plan for the day, see their teacher and kind of map out what their day looks like. It may mean a meeting at the end of the day to connect and see if they have any questions. But throughout the day, it would be an opportunity for all students in their class to independently learn and be engaged in learning activities.
Thanks, Nate. Kim Franta, I think I've got a pretty easy one for you here. If kids bring cold lunch, can they still buy milk?
Oh, of course they can. Yes, we'll have just a couple of very limited things that they could purchase, what we would consider a la carte, and milk being the biggest one, but you know, juice boxes and milk probably the main beverage choice of our youngest learners.
Thanks, Kim. Tara, I have a question about what in-person learning means and what the guidance from MDH is around the difference between a hybrid model and in-person. So our elementary students are starting in person. And so what does that mean in terms of physical distancing?
That's a great question. And the Minnesota Department of Health has put out a planning guide for schools. And so it really clearly maps those scenarios out. So scenario 1 is that in-person learning for students. Scenario 2 is the hybrid, and obviously scenario 3 is the distance learning. So in scenario 1, when kids are in person, like our elementary kids will be this fall, schools should create as much space during or between students and teachers as that's feasible during the day, but it will not be strictly enforced at that 6 feet of social distancing during the primary instructional time in the classroom. So we're going to do our best to keep as much distance in between students as possible, but we're not held to the same standard of the 6 feet of distancing that we would find in the hybrid model when we're only at 50% capacity.
Thanks, Tara. Related to that 50% number, John Thomas, can you confirm, you said that buses will be operating at 50% capacity. Is that true in every model?
Yes, yeah, and that's the way we wanted to set it up. We want to have our transportation support the schools no matter what model it is in, rather than trying to have huge disruptions by trying to reroute as we're moving between the plans. So we're setting it up that even in the all-in, everybody in the classroom scenario, our bus passenger ridership is still going to be set at somewhere close to 50%, so that we're meeting MDE standards, and we comfortably will go down under the 50% if we switch into a hybrid model really quickly. So we're setting it up so that transportation will be the same no matter what model we're in.
All right, thanks, John. Jay Waller.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Jay. Can you talk about what lunch is going to look like, where kids are going to eat their lunch, and what recess is going to look like for our youngest learners?
Yeah, we want to set up our system so that students can enjoy the lunch options that they typically would enjoy, but we're going to set it up a little differently so that students can have, I guess, a more safe and, you know, kind of more, I guess, a safer option. So we're going to do lunch in the classrooms. I think in most of our buildings, students will go down and go through the lunchroom and have kind of a touch-free option as far as like picking out their food and you know, selecting their items. So then they'll walk back to their classrooms and they'll be eating in their classrooms at a socially distanced kind of model. And then as far as recess goes, we know that recess is so important for anyone, myself included. So how do we get outside and really enjoy the out of doors? And classroom teachers will be taking students out at various times throughout the day. I think most of our buildings will have zones out on the playground so that classrooms can go to a specific zone and those students can enjoy the playground area. And that way we don't have a lot of cross-contamination happening out on the playground. So it should be really a great opportunity for students to get some fresh air, get the wiggles out, have some fun, and then have an opportunity to come back in and get back to some of the more intense learning opportunities there too.
And I'm going to keep you for just a second. We talked about in the return to learn kind of safe plan for the elementary, the mask breaks. And so is recess really a mask break? When are those being built into the schedule for kids?
Yeah, so teachers will have some opportunities to just, I think, get outside and take some mask breaks occasionally. I think someone the other day mentioned that, you know, maybe they go outside and they just kind of wiggle around and maybe let out a yell or maybe sing a song. So opportunities to do that. And then during recess, we're also going to be, I guess we're going to be monitoring that to determine when is the right time to have a mask break during recess. So if we know that we have a socially distanced opportunity out there at recess, then we'll be able to take the masks off. And if for some reason we're in a really more tight quarters or maybe more active tag game or something like that, then we'll have students keep the masks on. So we'll go through all those details with each of our students prior to recess, and we'll do a lot of training and kind of revisiting that throughout the fall as well.
Thanks, Jay. Jill Valor, are you out there?
Good evening, everybody. It's Jill Valor, Victoria Elementary.
Hi, Jill. Can you talk about sort of what a typical day is going to look like and what the classroom is going to look like for our students? Are they going to be on their Chromebooks all day? Are they going to be staring at screens? What is it going to look like for our elementary students in person?
Good question. So in our classrooms, we've been working hard at looking at all the furniture that's in there and really figuring out which pieces are most critical. So having a combination of tables and desks, so there's some variety of seating, but also being able to then have some distance between them, so some clear aisles for students to walk through and not have to always be close together, so giving them the opportunity to have some space between them. The teacher will still be presenting and teaching in class in person, just like always. And so there will be some Chromebook activities. And we're certainly going to take some time to learn Google Classroom and teach them the skills they might need on a distance learning day. But the whole day is not going to be tied to the computer. There'll be lots of interactive activities and discussion with the teacher and with classmates. We'll just be doing it at a little bit of a distance. There'll be some space. So many things will still occur just like last year, just looking for some more space between kids and teachers. And then we'll have the opportunity to do some teaching on how to use their Chromebook the best. And then that way, when they're at home, they'll have a few more skills for that.
And I'm just going to piggyback on that. You opened the door a little bit. Will parents get some tutorials on how to support their learners in Google Classroom?
So our plan to start the year, of course, is Connect, which we talked a little bit about with June. And at Connect, we're going to do a virtual walkthrough of Google Classroom so parents can see what it looks like, how to access the teacher site, so that they have a little bit of a chance to learn some of those skills before school starts. And then we'll continue to have some opportunities for parents throughout the year that we'll send home either virtually through video and some support sites as well.
Thank you so much, Jill.
Thank you.
Gretchen.
I'm here.
Hello. We love our specialists. Art and music and gym are all so important, and media is really important. Will we be continuing to offer those opportunities for kiddos this year? It was kind of hard in the spring in distance learning. Are they going to have access to their specialists again?
Absolutely. And I think too, Kelly, when I think of that question, kids are given opportunities to meet the standards in whatever model is presented. So if we're in person with kids, if families opt for the online learning academy, where we need to staff and feel it's really important to staff both. So families in that online learning environment will have specialist time and a teacher to connect with, because we know there are some kids that just like live for art or that live for that PE time, or music or media. So we need to continue to provide that in any environment. But then in person, we're still working on what that will look like. The time will be allocated the same that we had previously when we were in person before we left for the pandemic. But how it will be delivered, we're still working through that based on space and what's safe for staff and kids. But we're really close to what that will look like for our students, but it will be there no matter what the environment.
Great. Thanks, Gretchen. Joan.
Good evening.
Good evening. Can you talk about, and I think we use kind of the term as funded when we talk about class size. Can you talk about what class size really looks like at the elementary school? And I think there's some thought out there that maybe enrollment in the online learning academy might shift our class size at the elementary. And I don't know that that's necessarily the case. Can you provide some perspective on that?
Certainly. Well, we really don't have a limit or ceiling to class size. We do, however, have a range that we know is developmentally appropriate. So the older classrooms, the class sizes tend to sit at around 28, and the younger classes down in kindergarten, we keep at around the range of 20 to 22, and that would be true for kindergarten and first. It gets a little larger at second and third. And we try to stay as close to that as possible. And right now we're seeing a movement as families make the decision to do online learning academy. And so we will see where we land, and then we will try to stay as close to those areas and ranges as we possibly can. But I think also we have to remember that our online learning academy students need to have teachers, and they will be leaving us to go to online learning academy. So I think right now what's making our job interesting and getting our class lists out is that we're trying to get make sure we have the best environment with our outstanding teachers to provide for them.
Awesome. Thanks, Joan.
Thank you.
Nancy.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Good evening. So let's talk about masks.
Yes.
It's a hard road to travel for any age, really. Any of us who's had to wear a mask for an extended period of time. How will we be supporting our elementary students and helping them understand why it's important to wear a mask and keep that mask on? Is there anything that you could recommend to parents as they're thinking about getting their students ready for the fall?
Well, I think it's important first of all, we always rely on parents and their partnership. And it is an expectation that they would wear the mask throughout the day. Of course, we'll have some mask breaks as we talked about earlier. But really kind of getting them used to wearing the mask, maybe indoors. You know, many of us will run into Target or into a gas station, put the mask on and then take it off. But how can you maybe integrate that at home? I think Kaylee in a prior Zoom meeting said that she does that with her kids. Like anytime they have screen time, they wear a mask indoors, and and then maybe extending that time a little bit. So anything you can do before school starts, I think, is crucial to practice. And then also talking with your child about the importance of that would be wonderful. We've had club care here this summer for school-age childcare. The school-age kids from kindergarten through grade 5, and they have just done a phenomenal job of wearing their mask. There will be times, of course, when we'll run into maybe some concerns, but nothing that we can't work on together. And I think the kids will rise to the occasion, and we thank parents for their ongoing support. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Greg, you out there? Mr. Lang?
Hello.
What about lockers?
Lockers. All right, well, hello, folks. Thank you for joining this evening. I'm Greg Lang, the principal of our Chan Elementary School. And I just want to first off thank you for your grace and patience as we've navigated through some of our procedures and so forth. So, Kaylee, thank you. Great question. Lockers. Schools are all designed a little different. My school has lockers out in the hallways. Some of the other schools, newer schools, have kind of cubbies and bays where their items are kept. But we've had lots of discussions as an elementary admin team about lockers. We're looking at what are the ways that we can keep kids safe, staggering times to go to lockers. We're looking at really trying to create a model where we have just one student per locker or cubby, not sharing. We don't want to have any cross-contamination of things and so forth. So we're putting our arms around that, our minds together with that. Like I said, staggered dismissal times, going to lockers, making sure things are safe. Going out, like Jay talked about, going to recess. So, we're going to wear a mask, go outside to recess. What's the procedure for putting a mask in a little baggie so the teacher has that when they're outside and so forth. So lockers are kind of an essential thing for elementary kids. They're going to come in, right now when school starts, they're going to come in with backpacks, shorts, and a t-shirt, but it's not long. And now we're going to have snow pants, boots, hats, gloves, and mittens. So we'll definitely have some things ready for the kids hit the winter months.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. Brian, got a couple questions for you.
All right.
Can you talk about why, so I just want to confirm the commitment for the Online Learning Academy is 1 semester, which is January 22nd, I believe. Why are we doing semesters versus trimesters, which is what our elementary students are on?
Great question. The plan for moving forward with the Online Learning Academy commitment is really in recognition that we're a K-12 environment. Even though at the elementary we break down the classes into trimesters, and it's really just a reporting period. At an elementary level, classes, science, social studies, math, it's really a year-long class. At the secondary level, courses are for a semester, so it's a half-year course. Because of the Online Learning Academy environment, we may have staff teaching across levels, and so we wanted to recognize that. The other rationale for doing a break at the semester is we really tried to be family friendly. What we didn't want to have happen is that we would release elementary students at a trimester and secondary students were committed to that semester, and then parents may be put in a situation where they didn't have an older sibling to help care for some younger siblings. So it was an effort to be family friendly and also recognize that classes at different levels have different breaking points.
Thanks, Brian. For students who do opt into that Online Learning Academy, will they have access to additional resources? Will they be supplied materials? Much like I'm thinking about in distance learning, I had to go a couple times over the course of the couple months there to pick up things for my child's second grader's teacher to use at home and support his learning. Will that still be available for folks in the Online Learning Academy?
Definitely. A student's home school will probably be the place where they will pick up materials, but things such as math, we use consumable workbooks, kindergarten through 5th grade, so those would be sent home with learners for sure the first workbook that would probably take them through the first semester of school, and then other materials will be sent home as well. This fall, the district has also invested in some additional web-based resources so that we have some digital opportunities, not just print materials, but for sure we would be providing online academy students with the materials that they need to be successful at home.
Great. I have one more question for you. I'm going to give Tara notice that she's on deck. So that the A-Day, B-Day, every student in our district is going to get an A and a B assignment, correct? And parents should expect to hear when?
By next Wednesday.
The 25th, right?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So everybody will hear on the 25th. I know that's an ongoing question for folks. All right. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Tara, a couple questions for you.
I'm ready.
All right. So we've talked about this in a couple of other sessions, but I think it's an important point to reinforce. We are not just coming back to school in the middle of a pandemic, but it also happens to be the start of flu season and seasonal allergies and colds. What advice do you have for parents navigating that? What is going to be what causes a child to stay home? What is it going to be where they have an opportunity to come back to school? What's the balance there?
That is a really tough question to answer because COVID does look like the common cold. It does look like influenza. It does look like allergies. There's a lot of conditions that kind of overlap. And so we have to err on the side of caution. And if it looks like COVID, we are going to exclude based on COVID symptoms. However, if you happen to take your child to the doctor because they have a sore throat and they have a fever, we would exclude them based on those are two of the symptoms of COVID. But if they end up having a strep diagnosis from their doctor, then we would then take that doctor's note saying this child has strep. We would use the same guidance that we would take on any other strep case, and they could come back to school much sooner than what they would typically do if it was COVID. Now, if in the absence of any other diagnosis like that, we do have to err on the side of caution and exclude for COVID.
Okay. And then one last question for you. Obviously, if a student is out sick and doesn't feel well, we want them to focus on getting better. But if a student is in the middle of a 10-day, if they've recovered, but they're still quarantined, or we have, for whatever reason, a class that needs to quarantine, those kids still have access to learning, right? We will continue to support them in a distance learning format so that they're not stuck at home for long periods of time without having any access to continue their education.
Definitely. So we will definitely work with families to make sure that their student has access to their teacher in an online way so that they can continue to be home and be quarantined. And if they're well enough to participate to the extent that they're able to, we would love to have them in class virtually. And then when they're able to rejoin their class in person, they will have missed no instruction.
Thanks, Tara. Sue Harperts, I've got one club care question for you if you're out there still. For the families that enroll in the Wednesday club care during distance learning, will the club care staff be supporting them in their distance learning? Will they be kind of set up to be successful in that environment? What is the expectation there?
Within the daily schedule, we will plan designated times that kids can bring their Chromebook and then spend some time doing their distance learning. We're also in conversation with teaching and learning to see what types of things can our staff be trained in so then they can better support the kids while they're in the program.
Perfect. Thanks, Sue.
Yep.
And then the last question I'm just going to throw out to the principals. What do you want parents to know about this fall? What can they do to support their children, and what can they do to support you? What can they do to make sure that they're prepared for a successful return to learning, whether that's in the online learning academy or in any one of your buildings? And I'm just going to let you guys unmute and kind of take the reins. Whoever wants to go first. I see Greg popping up. All right, Greg.
All right. So great question and topic, quite honestly. as parents, you know, and others that are on this forum, I can't see everybody. I'm sure there's teachers and just community members at large that are curious and supportive of our schools. For us back in the trenches in our schools, we haven't seen our children, our students since March 13th. And that has created a lot of angst and anxiety amongst our students, even our staff, ourselves, and so forth. So, you know, while academics is certainly, you know, a school's charge and mission, but so is the social and emotional well-being of our students. So I think it's really important for our families to know that we have social emotional resources within our schools. All of our elementary schools, middles and high schools, we have licensed counselors and social workers. And so just make sure that you are checking in on the mental health of your child throughout the start of school, no matter what scenario you are in. If you're in our online academy, or if you're going to be with us for the pivot of either in-person hybrid or distance learning 2.0, just make sure that you stay in contact with the teacher. If you want to touch base with any of the principals, you certainly can, but we will get you in contact with our school social workers or counselors. If you already know them, feel free to reach directly out to them, but we can put you in contact with that resource as well. So thank you for this evening.
Great answer, Greg. Thanks for bringing that up. Anybody else have anything they want to share with our parents who are listening?
I'm going to chime in, and then we know for sure we want Nate. We talked about this at our principal meeting, so I want Nate to share his piece because it was incredible, the last parent session. But I just want to say to the last group had a question specifically about immersion, so I'm going to ask the question and answer it for those immersion families out there. The question has been asked, are we allowing or having immersion in the online academy? And that's a C, that's a yes. For sure, we want to be responsive to families' needs, just like Kelly mentioned for students on an IEP or 504s and intervention. The same is true for immersion. We will provide Spanish language teachers from our school to provide that education. We want to just give you a heads up, most likely it will be multi-age. So that allows for the kids to have different language models, see kids that they would typically see, you know, passing at recess and math, all that kind of stuff. But we will offer the language allocation based on the grade level that we have on our in person. And I know I can speak for, I think all of our parent teacher organizations have really partnered with us along with our office staff to support families. They're answering calls, they're, you know, just being extremely supportive and collaborative. And so we just encourage you to reach out to each school's parent teacher organization and the office staff as well, because they're equipped with answers and partnership, no matter, again, what model you're in. I think we believe as elementary principals, and I believe our district supports, that no matter what model families are in, they are part of our community and we are here to support the success of your student. So I want to just speak on behalf of the principals for that. So Nate, you should share your piece.
Thanks, Gretchen. I can't wait to volunteer you for our next committee. Appreciate that. I think one piece of advice that we've learned over the years is that our children and students model the behaviors that we have as parents. And as a parent myself in the district, I know how difficult this decision is. I know the anxiety that it's causing. I know the scheduling challenges that it presents. But I also know that if we demonstrate that anxiety, it's sure to roll over our kids. And so whatever model you choose, I would ask that you do it positively and know with a positive attitude that we're going to do this together. We're going to collaborate, and that every staff in this district is working extremely hard to make sure that this experience is going to be as positive as possible. This is not a normal situation, and we have never had to accomplish this before, but I know that we can do it together. And so we would ask for your grace and patience, as well as your partnership, to make sure that this is the best experience possible.
Thanks, Nate. Well, on that note, unless somebody else wants to pop up real quick and add anything, I think that's a great note to end on. I want to thank all of our principals and our district leaders who have been a part of this call. I want to thank all of our parents for joining, all of the great questions that we got. Tried to get through as many as I could. Again, really encourage you to reach out to your building principal if you have questions, you want to talk through scenarios. We are here to help you and support you, and make sure that you and your family make the best decision for this fall and moving forward into the year. We can't wait to see our kids back, and wish you all the best as you go through that decision-making process. Thanks again for your time tonight, and have a great evening.